Hello, welcome to week 6. Uh, the semester is going quickly, so make sure you keep up with your reading. I'm sitting here on a lovely July afternoon in the garden, so I have a little bit different backdrop for you today. I hope you enjoy it. We're in chapter 10 and 11 in the history of alcohol and chapter 4 in Tastes of Paradise. So please look at those chapters closely and engage in the conference discussions and take the quiz once you've done all those things. Okay, so let me just quickly go over this. Grab a pen or pencil, so you can take notes. In chapter 10, we're looking at the temperance movement, okay? So there's this explosion of interest in temperance, almost an obsession, you might say, by some sectors of society in alcohol and creative ways of how they can curb the consumption of alcohol or prohibit it altogether. And this is what differentiates this temperance movement from anything that had come before, really, is that some of these people actually were abstaining, or some of them even said to join a society you have to be a teetotaler. You have to not drink at all. This was very different in Western societies. You never had this kind of, you might call it, militancy towards alcohol, seeing alcohol sort of as a root of all social evils. So different parts of the country and different parts of the world reacted differently to alcohol, and as industrialization spread, a lot of countries have temperance movements. The strongest ones are, of course, in the United States, Canada, Great Britain, and the Scandinavian countries in Northern Europe. Those with the weakest or no temperance movements would have been Southern Europe, places like Italy, Spain. We'll see that France had a small, though divided and not very effective temperance movement because, again, wine was so popular in France. In Great Britain, there were lots of divisions between the temperance movement, between total abstainers and those who wanted just to lessen the alcohol consumption but not prohibit alcohol altogether. Working class culture relied on the public house for many of its services. Sometimes your post office, your general store, it would all be inside of a pub. So, and sometimes workers as well would receive their pay inside of a pub, although unions, when they come into existence late in the 1800s, early 1900s, are going to oppose that. So let's move on to chapter 11. We talk about native peoples and imperialism. Now, in 1884, which is mentioned in History of Alcohol, you had the Berlin Conference. This was a conference where European powers divided Africa. This is an imperialistic moment. We call it the scramble for Africa, right? Within about 20 years, all of African territory is going to be gobbled up by these large empires. And they're also going to be interested in...
Zoom left, right, zoom out, left, right, slide. Stop taking video button.
They're also going to be interested in trading alcohol. Alcohol is going to be a large part of the imperialistic project, as we'll see. So make sure you look at chapter 11 very closely. Also interesting there, you have a brief discussion of alcohol usage on plantations in the United States, and celebration of holidays there. There was a broad movement in colonized countries as well to prohibit eventually alcohol from indigenous peoples, from the native peoples there. If they couldn't tax it, they weren't interested in people being able to consume it, right? And a lot of the alcohol consumption there would have been untaxable because a lot of it was homemade. We already see in those conflicts with the Whiskey Rebellion. And then finally, we have Tastes of Paradise, the discussion of tobacco. This is a very interesting topic as well, and we'll see how tobacco goes through all these different phases. There's that kind of a time of when it's a novelty, when they're trying to figure out how to use it. They refer to it as drinking tobacco. Then we have the use of pipes. During the Enlightenment, smoking tobacco becomes popular and a way of distinction. Then cigars come in late in the 18th century. Again, cigars were originally a status symbol, and they were a lot of cities and places around the world actually banned smoking in public areas of tobacco, but generally because they wanted to keep its exclusivity, because it was an upper class aristocratic kind of symbol. So they didn't want just everyone doing it. And also there was the issue of fears of fire, because so many cities were built of constructed of wood, and lots of cities in the 1800s 1800s actually did burn to the ground in disastrous fires. And then finally, we have the advent in the mid 1800s of the cigarette. You can see here consumerism kind of ramping up, right? Because the more we move into the consumer age, the more effective companies become at marketing tobacco to us. And the cigarette is like the almost perfect type of consumable thing. It lasts about 5 minutes and boom, then you want another one, right? We see the different ways in which it was used as rebellion by first the suffragettes. That's the name of those women in Great Britain who sometimes were quite militant about getting the vote before the First World War. And then we have the use of the cigarettes as sex symbols in the kind of early Hollywood era, and I would even mention to you as well, the how quickly attitudes have changed towards cigarettes in the last 20 or 30 years and how they've become so regulated now. They're one of the most regulated drugs that we have, but yet a great deal of the population still uses them. So look at all of those topics this week, and we will discuss some of those on our discussion board. We don't have time for all of them, though, so make sure you do your reading closely, and I will see you all on another video feed next week. Thanks.
Video pause unavailable. Init value. Button. To activate, press stop taking video button. To activate.